Hi, and welcome to another interruption. What I'd like to do today is kind of discuss the conversations that we're trying to have with other believers. We don't want Satan to get a foothold on anything. And mainly what I'm going to talk about today is replacement theology. Because as we get closer to the return of Christ, Scripture plainly tells us Israel will be front and center of the events that usher in the second coming. So as we share our faith, the subject of Israel will definitely be brought up. And some talking points to show the whole truth is what I'm going to try to give to you today. So yes, number one, the Jewish people are God's chosen people. God will bless those who bless Israel and curse those who curse Israel. That's Genesis 12. Very simple. If we bless God's people, He will bless us. If we curse God's people, He will curse us. That's plainly written. It don't need any theologian to decipher that for us. So even though they're not following God like they should, not all of them have accepted Christ. That's a bad thing. But even though they're not following God like they should, He's not went back on His promises. I wrote down this quick timeline. So in your discussions with your friends or family or whoever about whether or not Israel is still God's chosen people or have they been replaced, think about this. Starting in 3500 BCE, that's before Common Era or before the birth of Jesus, the first settlement of Jerusalem was founded. 1800 BCE, the first city wall was built. Now, by 1200 BCE, Jerusalem was actually conquered by the Canaanites. But in 1000 BCE, King David took it back. 960 BCE, his son Solomon built the first Jewish temple. Now, when the Jews rebelled against God, He allowed others to take over time and time again. It's funny how God does that to us. He doesn't necessarily punish us. He just turns us over to ourselves, and the punishment comes right away, doesn't it? But anyway, I won't mention all the times that happened right now, but going on with this, 701 BCE, the Assyrians took over. 586, Babylonian destroyed Jerusalem. 332 BCE, Alexander the Great of Macedonia conquered Jerusalem. In 63 BCE, Rome captured Jerusalem. Now, in 32 CE, now that's Common Era, that's after the birth of Jesus. In 32 CE, Jesus was crucified by Rome. In 614 CE, the Persians are now in control of Israel. In 638, Muslims controlled until 1099 CE. Then came the Crusade period. That period needs a lot more discussion than we have time for right now. But going forward, 1917, the British took over Jerusalem in World War I. In 1948, the State of Israel was reestablished. In 1967, Israel captured and reunites Jerusalem's old city. Now, December 6 of 2017, President Donald Trump recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. They went from being established to being taken over to being gone and dispersed. Now they're all the way back where God says they were going to be. Brings us to October of 2023. The same group that God told Joshua to wipe out completely, but He didn't. They once again attacked Israel, setting up a clear divide between pro-Israel and anti-Semitic groups here in the U.S. As Brother Dan says, we are living in biblical times. So please have the conversations. You may be surprised how many people don't know the whole truth. We vote pro-Israel because we want the blessings, that come from blessing God's chosen people. Now, Israel in the Bible could possibly mean ethnic or national Israel, since it had apparently ceased to exist as a nation. But the Jewish people were scattered across the globe for 2 millennia. It certainly appeared to many that God's purpose for them had come to an end. So scholars interpreted the Bible in light of their understanding. Again, in light of their understanding. Not imagining that Israel would ever exist again. But since the reestablishment of Israel back in the land in they were back in the land in 1948, we can start to read the Bible with new information that helps us to understand what God is talking about when he says, Israel. The events of 1948 as presenting the shocking possibility that when the Bible talks about Israel, it could literally mean Israel. Since the early church fathers, as far back as Justin Martyr in 160 A.D., Christians been assuming that Israel really means the church. Israel has been scattered and the land renamed Palestine for almost 100 years. So that's kind of easy to see how that happened. But the error in the replacement theology, try reading Romans chapters 9 through 11. And every time it says Israel, replace the word Israel with the word church. Again, that's Romans 9, 10, and 11. And every time it says Israel, replace it with the word church. It won't take you long to see that that makes no sense at all. Israel really means Israel in both the Old and the New Testaments. While the New Testament often describes Israel and the church in similar terms, both are the bride of God, children of God, the chosen people, and so on. But never does the New Testament call the church Israel. The word Israel occurs 70 times in the New Testament. And 9 other times it actually refers to the word Israelite. All but 2 of these instances are unequivocally referring to the nation of Israel and not to the church. The 2 exceptional cases being Romans 9:6 and Galatians 6:16. In the past, people have clung to Galatians 6:16 as an example of how Israel can mean the church. But let's look at that verse real close. Galatians 6:16 says, "Peace and mercy be upon all who walk by this rule, upon the Israel of God." But if we look what the text actually says, the original Greek, these translations have missed a key word. Kai, kai, or Kui, koi, literally translated, peace on them and mercy, and also on Israel of God. In other words, even though the Greek text indicates that Paul was pronouncing peace and mercy to the followers of the way, and also to the Israel of God, those who were translating the text decided it could not possibly mean that Paul wanted to bless the house of Israel as well as the Gentile followers of Yeshua. It's funny, they decided to lump the 2 together with no distinction. While it is not technically incorrect to translate it in this manner, there's many reasons not to do so. The Greek word kai to mean and or also, which is far more commonplace. So looking at the context of Paul's letters, Paul talks of both the church and of Israel as separate entities many times. So one does not replace the other, even if one foreshadows the other in a typological manner. In Revelation, we see the tribes of Israel together with every nation, tribe, and tongue, worshiping God at the end of time. And of course, the Messiah will return to Jerusalem. Jerusalem is in Israel. Israel is Israel. Right until the end. To not make the distinction between Israel and the church means that we can miss so much when we read the scriptures. Seeing Israel as meaning Israel when we read the Bible brings a whole new level of revelation about how God is unfolding his perfect plan for all of us. Why is it important to know that? Because if God will not fulfill the promises he made to Israel of future restoration and salvation, well, for example, in Ezekiel 36 through 48, Isaiah 60 through 66, and Zechariah 12 through 14, read all those chapters. Because if God is not faithful and the church can't rely on him to keep his promises to the church, to the Israelis, how can we rely on him to keep his promises to the church? What happens? Doubt. Doubt enters and that is one of Satan's favorite tools. Doubt enters, and the believer falls every time. And doesn't Satan just love that, to watch us trip and fall? But in case the conversation gets a little stale with all these dates and all these facts and figures, try this. Say, 1 set of rules, please. What do you mean 1 set of rules? If the Canaanites, the Romans, the Persians, the Assyrians, Muslims can all militarily claim Israel, then why can't Israel use the military to not only defend itself, but take back what belonged to them all along? If he can't use the military, then all the other countries needs to get out and leave Israel alone. Either it's okay or it's not. Right? Just one set of rules. Don't fear talking about what God has done and is doing. Be more afraid of not speaking up. Man has chosen to try and explain God on his level. Is that so he can put himself on a level playing field with God? Don't water down the scriptures so you can understand it. The Bible quotes Jesus saying, "No one comes to the Father except by me." That's in John 14:6. A lot of churches teach that there are many ways to heaven. Man trying to fit God in a box. The church has now replaced God's promise. How about we quit acting like Adam and Eve? Eating out of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That didn't turn out so well, did it? Let's just trust his word as it is written. And be honest with yourself. Should God have promised salvation to you? Let's be thankful he keeps his word, even when we don't think he should. Isaiah 55:8 says, "My thoughts are not your thoughts, and neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord." Something to think about, food for thought. Till next time.